Welcome. So today we're digging into a text that explores a really powerful connection, the one between Scripture and our ability to persevere in prayer, especially when it feels like nobody's listening.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the challenge the text brings up, why our prayers can kind of fade away. Then, we'll jump into the foundation it proposes, look at a couple of key examples from Scripture, see what the payoff of persistence is, and then wrap it all up with a really practical call to action.
So first things first, the source material kicks off by tackling a problem that I think a lot of us can relate to when it comes to a prayer life.
And it really all centers on this question, right? What happens when you start praying with all this energy and enthusiasm, but then you're met with a delayed response or maybe just silence? It's a super common point of frustration.
The text is quick to point out that this isn't some kind of unique failure. It's a common hurdle that almost everyone faces. You have that initial burst of faith, but it can just so easily fade into weariness. And that is the core problem this whole text is trying to solve.
So, how do we get over this tendency to just fade out? The author argues that Scripture is the direct solution. So let's take a look at how that foundation is actually built.
Okay, so the core argument here is that when you ground your prayers in Scripture, you totally transform the whole act. It's not just about repeating a request anymore, it actually becomes an active demonstration of your faith. This whole idea shifts prayer from being a hopeful wish list into a confident claim on God's faithfulness.
And the anchor for this entire idea comes from this one specific verse in the Gospel of Luke. The source uses this quote as its foundational text, this central command to always pray and, maybe most importantly, not to faint or, not to lose heart.
And this is absolutely crucial. Scripture isn't just a source of things to pray for, it's presented as the actual fuel for our endurance in prayer. It's what gives us the reasons, the promises, and the deep-down assurance we need to just stay the course.
Now, to make this case a bit more concrete, the document doesn't just stick with theory. It highlights two key stories from the Bible to show this exact principle in action.
Now this is really interesting, the way this is contrasted. On one side, you've got this parable about a widow, right? Her persistence is all based on a general belief in the principle of justice. But on the other side, you have a real-world account of the early church praying for Peter, and their persistence is grounded in a specific trust in God's promises. The author argues that both of these stories are pointing to the exact same truth.
And this just brilliantly illustrates the author's main argument. It's the knowledge of God's character and His promises, knowledge that comes directly from Scripture, that gives our prayers their staying power and keeps them from becoming, a futile exercise.
Okay, so if that's the how, what about the what? What are the results? Well, the text moves on to outline the specific outcomes of adopting this kind of Scripture-guided prayer.
So the source lists several key benefits, and they go way beyond just getting an answer. This isn't just about the results, it's about transformation. It frames persistence as a character-building process, one that strengthens faith, builds resilience, and helps develop both patience and humility. It's really all about aligning with a bigger picture.
So the big takeaway here is that this whole practice is designed to fundamentally change the internal posture of the person who's praying. The goal is to shift your mindset away from all that frustration and doubt and toward one of focused, faithful expectation.
Finally, the source text wraps up by taking all of this theory and distilling its practical advice into a really clear, actionable process that anyone can follow.
And it's a beautifully simple two-step application. First, get specific. Identify one ongoing need or goal. Second, commit yourself to praying for it persistently, but not just empty-handed. You use relevant Scripture as your foundation and as the source of your encouragement to keep on going.
And that leaves us with the final thought from this text. It poses a question that really reframes the whole issue. It's not just asking if prayer works, but it suggests that maybe, just maybe, endurance, an endurance that is uniquely fueled by Scripture, is the actual key to unlocking its power.